Good afternoon and welcome back to the channel. So today it's really hot, 32 degrees in the UK, which is super hot, but it also means it's a great day for insect photography. So I'm going to be looking for butterflies, dragonflies and stuff like that. A flat-bodied chase has just flown past me. So I'm at a lake in Essex and there's loads of dragonflies, loads of damselflies, and there'll be lots of other insects as well. But I'm going to sort of concentrate in this video on dragonflies because they're quite predictable. Once you find a location for dragonflies, they'll come back time and time again, particularly if you find a perch. So if you find a perch that a dragonfly's on, then it flies off, then there's a really good chance it's going to come back. So if you miss it the first time, then you can be ready for when it comes back. So that's why I quite like photographing dragonflies. So the first thing I would think about, or the first tip when it comes to photographing dragonflies, is to find a perch that a dragonfly is using and then set up and wait, because chances are it will come back. And then the second thing I think is important to do or to think about is to come out on the right sort of days. Ideally what we want it to be is warm, humid and still, and you don't get many of those days in the UK actually. So I've got that sort of day today. It's really warm. Well, warm is an understatement. It's 32 degrees, it's hot. It's reasonably still, there's not a lot of wind, which is great, and it's quite humid, and that means the dragonflies are more active. And even though they are more active, as I say, they'll come back to that perching point. Excuse, sounds like there's a train going past in the background. I don't know if you'll hear that or not, but I'm going to crack on anyway, because this is a great location, but there's a road over there. There's a railway track over there somewhere, so there's bound to be a little bit of background noise, so apologise in advance. So the first two things to think about then are obviously location. The sort of location we want for dragonflies and damselflies is a river or a lake or a pond, because that's their environment. You will see dragonflies quite a long way away from water, up to a couple of miles sometimes, but if you want to see a lot of dragonflies and a lot of damselflies, pick an area that's got water, so ponds, rivers, lakes. So that's the habitat. And then when you're in that habitat, look for the perching points, so little reeds sticking out of the water, reeds by the side of the riverbank or the lake, because once they start perching, they will come back. And then weather conditions, hot, humid and still. And if it is a little bit windy, find a sheltered area, because we are getting a little bit of wind here. And what happens with the wind is it moves your composition. So with a close-up photograph, any slight movement completely changes the composition and you have to start again. So we ideally want it to be quite still. Okay, so when it comes to focusing, which is probably the most important thing for macro photography, if I'm using the macro lens, which I am at the moment, this is my 105 Nikon macro lens, and I'm really close to my subject. So we're not talking about standing quite a long way off, because if you're standing a reasonable distance away, the autofocus will still work. But when you get really close, then it means the autofocus struggles. So what I do then is I use manual focus. And for insects and things that might move quite quickly or might just jump and disappear off into the vegetation, you need to be quite quick. So what I do is I get a rough focus with the manual focus ring. So I'll turn the manual focus ring and I'll get it roughly in focus, or as close as I can. And then I'll rock backwards and forwards with the lens, and you'll see the subject snap in and out of focus, and the minute it snaps into focus, you hit the shutter button. Now you can do it with a single shot, so press the shutter button once and it takes one picture, and if you get a lot of practice in, that absolutely works. Or you can leave it on continuous shutter release and go bang, 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 and maybe take 10 or 20 frames a second, and as you rock backwards and forwards, at least one of those is probably going to be in focus. So you only need to do manual focus when you're really close and you're going for that 1-to-1 life-size ratio. So in other words, the insect is as big on the digital sensor as it is in reality. So if the insect was 15mm long, it would appear 15mm long on the digital sensor. That's a 1-to-1 life-size ratio. And when you get to those sort of magnifications, then manual focus is definitely best. And as I say, get it in rough focus using the manual focus ring, and then rock backwards and forwards and you'll see it snap in and out of focus. When I'm using my zoom lens, which I will do at some stage today, I use it in autofocus because you're further away. So I'd use the macro lens when I want to get in really, really close and I want to get that life-size reproduction, and then I use manual focus. If I'm doing a dragonfly, especially quite a large dragonfly, and it's over in the reed beds and there's water around it and I can't get to it close enough with the macro lens, then I'll put on my 180 to 600, or if you've got a 1 to 400, a zoom lens anyway, and then I would zoom in and I would get as close as I could, as close as the minimum focusing distance will allow me to, and it varies from lens to lens, but most zoom lenses, or all zoom lenses, have got a minimum focusing distance. So if you go closer than that minimum focusing distance, the lens won't focus, and it's normally between 1 to 2.5 meters, something like that. But if you're doing a big dragonfly and you get as close as your lens, your zoom lens will allow you to get, you normally get quite a large reproduction, and it won't be a macro shot, but it's a really good close-up shot. So in that case, I would use the autofocus. But using a macro lens, when I'm on really close, manual focus, rock backwards and forwards, is, I think, the best way to get really sharp pictures. Obviously, when you're shooting macro shots or super close-up shots, depth of field is a massive issue. And with insects, I don't tend to focus stack, because the Nikon system doesn't, the focus stacking system on the Nikons are just not good enough for focus stacking insects. It's good for flowers and fungi and stuff like that, but not great for insects. So I'm not going to be doing focus stacking, which means I'm going to shoot with a reasonably high F number if there's enough light. So F8, F11, F16 I would go for, and even then I'm not going to get the whole of the insect in focus. So just concentrate on getting the eyes in focus, because that is the key element, isn't it? If the eyes are not sharp, then the picture's no good to look at. So get the eyes sharp, and then if anything else drops out of focus, we can live with that. Incidentally though, if you can position yourself so you're parallel to the insect, a lot more of it is going to be in focus. If you're shooting along the insect, only the head is going to be in focus, or the eyes, and then it's going to drop out quite quickly because depth of field is minimal. But I just think that F16 is probably the highest I like to go for two reasons. One, you start to get diffraction if you go higher, and secondly, your ISO is going to be going up unless it's a really bright day. So I don't mind shooting at high ISO numbers, but ideally I want to keep that as low as I can. So F16 is probably the highest I go. If I'm really struggling for depth of field, I may go F22. Okay, I've switched to the 180 to 600 now for two reasons. One, so that I can get to the dragonflies that are too far away, because I haven't got Wellingtons with me and I can't get in the lake. And secondly, just over there in amongst all the lily pads, there's a heron. So I've got some nice shots of the heron as well. And I've also just spotted a common tern, which I didn't know was here. I was here at this lake last year, no common terns at all, but this year there's a common tern floating around, and as I say, the heron, I've got some lovely shots of the heron. I mean, nothing spectacular, it's just sitting there, possibly getting ready to fish, but it's not actually doing anything, but a nice low angle right across the lake. So all good really, and as I say, this enables me to get to those dragonflies who are a little bit further out of the way, and I would use autofocus on this because the autofocus works well. I mean, there's a dragonfly just up there in the trees, so I'm going to see if I can get that now actually, because as I say, they will sort of come away from the lake and try and perch up in the trees as well. So this gives me a more flexible approach, the 180 to 600, but it won't give me that super close magnification, that one-to-one life size. But for big dragonflies, as I say, doesn't really matter. Right, okay, this is a prime example of when to use a zoom lens rather than a macro lens. I've got loads of damselflies, only small damselflies, out on the lake, and they're laying eggs. Now there's no way in the world I could get close enough to them with a macro lens. unless I was actually in the lake, which I have done in the past, but I can't do here. So going for the zoom lens, actually there's one down there now. Let's just get on that. There's a couple actually. Right, they're coming quite close in actual fact, but still not close enough to use with a macro lens. So this is a good example. Now, what should we use for insect photography, macro lens or a big zoom lens? And obviously the answer is you take both and you use both. It's horses for courses, isn't it? So if I want that really close up, 1-to-1 ratio reproduction, then I'm just going to be patient and wait for something to come close enough for me to get in with the macro lens. If I want to increase my picture taking opportunities, then I'm better off going for the 180 to 600, and then I can actually take photographs of stuff that's further away. Now it won't be such a big magnification as I've already mentioned, but with the cropping abilities of today's modern cameras, it's still really good. So my advice is, if it's the question of what do we use, a macro lens or a zoom lens for insect photography, particularly dragonflies and damselflies, then it's there's no one answer. You take both. Sometimes you use a macro lens and sometimes you use a zoom lens. So look, I hope you've enjoyed this video. And as always, if you have enjoyed it, if you can give it a thumbs up, a like, that would be great. It really helps the channel, and I would like to grow this channel. It seems impossible sometimes with the way YouTube algorithms go, but if you can give it a like and a thumbs up, that would be fantastic. And if you haven't already subscribed, if you can consider subscribing, that would be also great, the more the merrier. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this. It's absolutely one of those hot, sticky UK summer's days, but the ideal weather conditions for this type of photography. So thanks very much for watching, guys, and I will speak to you on my next video. So bye for now.